in the horror genre. I'm your host, Nicole, and it's time to share another dark tale.
Hello, brothers and sisters, and welcome back to the Religion and Horror series. Tonight, we are talking about the anthology film Southbound from 2016. And I am joined once again by friend of the show and host of Ghoulish University, Logan. Welcome back, Logan.
Hello, Nicole. Happy to be back.
Yeah, I'm so glad to have you back. I'm starting to have repeat guests, which is a lot of fun. And of course, I wanted to include you in this show because anthologies are kind of like your specialty of choice, your subgenre of choice. So please, I know you're going through a bit of a restructure at the moment, but please tell the folks about your show.
Yeah, so as it stands right now, Ghoulish University is a show where we used to pretty regularly go through episodes of Tales from the Crypt, and we would cover basically just what happened. It was pretty conversational, despite having the university title. But yeah, I had two other guest co-hosts. They were pretty cool. Well, they're still pretty cool. They're still with us. But as Nicole did mention, we're kind of going through a bit of a restructure. So we maybe stepping away a little bit from the Tales from the Crypt being the only thing we cover, and maybe branching out into other anthologies. And that'll be kind of the goal moving forward. But anthologies have always definitely been like some of my favorite horror subgenre, if you will. So really excited to kind of have something where I can dive into those overall.
Yeah, it's a great idea because, as we know, there's no shortage of horror podcasts. I mean, there's a billion jillion. And the two kind of most popular are either horror fiction, which I love, or horror review. And so anytime you can find like a little dark alley that no one else is doing, it's great to do it. And I also really love horror anthologies, even though quite often they end up being not so great. But that makes for also really good conversation. Yeah. So I'm personally invested in the success of your show, and I'm excited to see what you do and where you take it. And I'm excited to insert myself.
Yes. No. Yes, you're one of my favorite guests to have on. Don't tell anyone else. Between you and me. I love everybody who comes on. But yeah, I'm excited. And I also feel like horror anthology is really where you can get a lot of, I know it's been a lot in discussion these days, especially in our community, a lot of original horror IP, if you will, not IP, I guess, but you get a lot of original stories. And I feel like anthology gives people a lot more room, a lot more opportunity to tell them. I think these are some stories that would never have been told if they took it to a big studio.
Yeah.
So.
And because also like some stories just are shorter. Not every story takes an hour and a half or 2 hours to tell. And sometimes you can tell a really unsettling or fun story in a short amount of time. So yeah, it is a really neat format, and like you said, it can be an experimental format. And so this is a great segue because normally this is where we would talk about religious background, but you and I did that already. So if anyone wants to hear Logan's full story, you can go back to the Conjuring episode and check that out, which you should anyway, because that was a really fun episode, I think.
Oh, yeah. Totally.
Very fun. So instead of that, I thought we would take a little bit of time and talk about some of our favorite horror anthologies before we dig into Southbound. So you are my guest. I will let you go first. What would you like to talk about? What are some of your favorites?
Yeah, definitely. Masters of Horror. I have seen some of my favorite, I think, horror stories I've ever seen told in Masters of Horror. Yeah, I definitely would recommend like Fair Haired Child is one of my favorites. And then I'll cover it on my show one day, but it's like Family or something like that. That's another one that I definitely would highly recommend people check out. I think one that I know a lot of horror specific fans may hear about, that I think one that's criminally underknown is the ABCs of Death. Which I think people will see like one-off skits. I remember seeing one like on a Facebook clip or whatever. And then years later, I watched it in the movie. I was like, I know exactly what this is. So I think it's cool. I think a lot more people should see it, but it's also got some really messed up stuff in it.
Yeah,
So
ABCs of Death is a real mixed bag. And I remember watching it when I was like going down the dark trail, I think in my 20s, and like trying to find all the nooks and crannies. And there are a couple of those that are still like seared into my brain that I will not need to revisit.
I agree with you. And I definitely, and I recommend it to people as like, obviously cautious recommend, but at the same time, like I still think at least maybe look up like best of ABCs of Death, because I know that they will find the ones that really are like the best. You see some weird ones in there for sure.
Yeah.
But of course, Tales from the Crypt is a classic, anthology show that I love. And the Demon Knight movie, I love that movie so much. So I definitely still have way more anthology to dive into, which is an exciting part of the show that I'm looking forward to doing. The Mortuary Collection, that one that more recently came out. Really
that has been on my
one.
list for like 2 Halloween seasons, and I haven't watched it yet. So it'll make its way onto this list again, and maybe I'll watch it this year because I've heard nothing but good things about it.
Big recommend for sure. Yeah.
Okay. And that's Clancy Brown's in it, right?
Yes, he's
Mr.
like
Krabs.
He's kind of like yeah, icon. He's kind of like he's the crypt keeper of the Mortuary Collection, if you will.
Okay, yeah, he's such a great actor, period, but he's a great character actor. So I imagine he kills it.
Oh yeah, he's a good part of the movie. So
yeah, so I'll keep it on the list. So like I said, I've always really enjoyed anthologies as well. And some of the classics, of course, are Creepshow, which Creepshow is really special to me because for the last decade, I kick off spooky season with Creepshow. On September 1st, I watch Creepshow. So that one has a near and dear place in my heart. And I think Creepshow is a rare example of it's good from start to finish. They're all good. There's not really a weak link. There's some goofiness in there, but it's kind of like, I'm sure at the time it came out, it was like a little bit like, I don't know about this, but over the years it has gained the perfect patina. And that movie is like creepy. It's silly. It's classic. it is like the benchmark for anthologies for sure. And then also Twilight Zone, the movie, is another classic. That's another one where I love them all. In particular, I mean, it's hard to even pick a favorite in Twilight Zone, the movie. But I do have a soft spot for the Joe Dante segment where the little boy is like holding his family captive and they're like monster cartoon characters. It's such a vibe. And then also Trick or Treat.
That's the one. Yep. Of course. How could I forget?
Which when I first watched Trick or Treat, I didn't even think of it as an anthology, really.
That's probably why I forgot it. It doesn't feel like one because it, like this movie that we're going to talk about, it kind of, the way that it meshes together is really nice. I prefer that one, but anyway. But yes.
Oh, yeah. Well, Trick or Treat is another, I mean, it's a top tier. And I think probably because I am pretty sure, so Michael Dougherty directed it, and I'm pretty sure he also wrote the whole thing. So there's a definite difference when you like set out to craft a story a certain way versus, oh, let's just collect all these random pieces and put them together. You can tell the ones that are a little more intentional for sure. Also, there is a weird little anthology called Holidays. Yes. And it's the one with the Easter segment is the one with the Jesus bunny, which anyone who's listened to my show knows all about the Jesus bunny. The rest of the movie is like pretty good. There are some duds in there, but like I think there's more good ones than bad ones, and just the novelty of like there's a short film for like every major holiday. So that one's a lot of fun for sure. I
guess I would be remiss if I didn't at least mention VHS as well. I know that we kind of had a conversation not too long ago about the first one. I would definitely say this is, I think, an unpopular opinion, but number 4 has been my favorite, the 94. I have not seen has the most recent one come out, or is it about to? I can't remember. I've seen 95, but I haven't
85
seen
came out last year. Or earlier this year. I don't know. Time flies. It was worth a watch.
that the one with the segment where they go into that Legends of the Hidden Temple show thing? Does that have that one segment?
I don't think so.
Okay, so I need to watch 85 then.
Fun though. I think the only one I haven't seen is 99. So
that's
maybe
the one 99. That's the one that I also saw. I didn't love that one as much. I need to see 85 though. Okay. There we've come to the
we've arrived.
We figured it out.
Yeah, but the VHS like franchise is very unique in that way, and I can't believe that it has turned into a franchise,
right?
Although it makes perfect sense, you know. But I was fully prepared to like recommend VHS in my list. And then I went back and rewatched it a couple of days ago and was like surprised at the rewatch. Like spoilers for VHS, like skip ahead a couple minutes if you don't want to hear this. But I was really just shocked at the horrible treatment of women, and not just in like one segment, across the entire show, including the wraparound. There's only one segment, the last one, the best one, that doesn't have some kind of like horrific sexually exploitative plot line about with a woman in it. And I was shocked for two reasons. One, because I just didn't remember that. I'd only seen it one time when it first came out. I remembered being uncomfortable during a segment or two, but I just didn't remember every segment being like that disturbing. And also because the guys who made that, we're talking like heavy hitters: David Bruckner, Ty West, Simon Barrett, Radio Silence, Joe Swanberg. Like, these are all people who I love their work, and I haven't seen this characteristic in any of their other work. And I was just like, are our young filmmakers just clueless? Like, do they not realize what they're doing? Are they trying to make a point and they just didn't bring it home? I don't know. But either way, I was like bothered.
I wonder if maybe that's just what they thought that horror was, because overall, like as a genre, horror has not really been kind to women. Like, it hasn't been kind to people in general, but I feel like women specifically get, you know, you always see the trailer of the girl in the house and the phone rings and it's always the girl who has like the person who calls her. And it's just things like that kind of frustrate me too about horror, that for a second in this movie, I was about to feel that way, but we'll talk about that later. But but I agree. I remember people talking to me about VHS as if it was a like iconic, you know, anthology movie, and people loved it. And they're like, oh yeah, we'll watch that one again. And then the first time I watched it, I kind of looked around at everybody. I was like, are we watching the same movie? I don't understand why people. So it's crazy because those people that, you know, Bruckner and Radio Silence, they worked on this movie too. So it's just crazy. But that's my only logical explanation, because if I also enjoy a lot of these filmmakers, I'm kind of like, maybe that's just as they were young, you know, young filmmakers, maybe that's just what they thought it was supposed to be. And of course it did work for them, because this movie's still pretty popular, you know, flaws aside in my mind, but it's still pretty popular to this day. But that's why I like 94 the best. Yeah.
Well, I couldn't help but think, I was like, is there a way to fix this movie? And I kept wishing, because this is one of the annoying things I do when I don't like the end of a horror movie. I try to figure out how to fix it, because, you know, because I'm a filmmaker, like I could do a better job. But I was like, what would be great is if because our wraparound story is those guys break into, like, they've been sent to collect this VHS tape. And I was like, it would be great if the women that they were assaulting in the beginning, if they set it up and at the end, these women came back and were like, we did this to you. That would be great.
That would have been, and narratively, I think that would have been way more exciting too. Sorry to talk over you. That really did fix basically the whole movie for me, at least. Because, like, I guess they do kind of, like, we're already talking spoilers, get got at the end, but it's by, like, I guess randos or people, unseen forces. I can't remember now, but it was definitely not the girls they were assaulting at the beginning of the movie.
No, yeah, it's not clear. It's not clear enough. They don't, and not everybody gets what's coming to them. Anyway, we're getting off.
We're getting off
the path here.
Sorry, that's my fault.
You know what? You and I might have to talk about VHS on your show, and we can really get into it.
We can really get into the first one, because we did cover the second one for our little Halloween class party. But number one, we could definitely talk about, or another better one.
Or a better one. Or we just leave it because it's been talked about.
It has been talked about. We got it.
Oh, boy. Okay, so let's pivot to the matter at hand, which is Southbound.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to talk about this movie because I keep recommending it. As I'm going along doing my religion and horror series, I have mentioned this movie in my recommendation section like 3-4 times. And I was like, I think this means I need to cover it because I keep recommending it. And I remember when I saw it back in 2016, really liking it and have not revisited it. So I was like, it'll be fun to look at it with fresh eyes. And as I've already mentioned, you were just the only person I ever thought about to talk about this with. And so I don't usually give a spoiler alert at this point, but I'm going to give it a little earlier this time because to talk about this movie at all and how it fits into religion, we kind of have to like get into spoiler territory right off the bat. So if you haven't seen Southbound, please go check it out because it will make the discussion we're about to have a lot richer.
You want to wear the black, I know.
Of course I want to wear the black.
911, what's your emergency?
I just hit a woman with my car. I'm in the middle of nowhere.
Sir, I'm sorry. Sir, you're breaking up.
I said I'm in the middle of nowhere?
We still have this one last weekend with our little girl.
Well, this next one is for all you lost souls. All you sinners racing down that long road to redemption, but heading straight into that pit of darkness up ahead. We're all on the same endless highway.
Of course we get a flat.
Guys, car! Why don't you come to our place?
This place feels like a bad acid trip.
Guys, we have got to go.
I'm not going anywhere.
Well, they're gonna try to stop you, but you gotta keep moving.
Help! I need some help! I don't deserve this.
What do you want? We're all just trying to find our way home. That's life, right?
So another thing we're going to do that's a little different is usually, I will read the plot synopsis to set us up, but that doesn't really make sense in an anthology. And so I set out to write a little recap of the whole movie and truncate each story. And that was like, nope, we're losing detail. It's going to be too hard to try to do this. So what we're going to do is I'm going to read a plot synopsis for each section, and we're going to kind of talk about each section on its own. And I'm sure the sections will bleed into each other and the discussion will be all over the place, as it always is. And that is fine. So the overall 30,000 foot view synopsis is 5 interlocking tales of terror follow the fates of a group of weary travelers who confront their worst nightmares and darkest secrets over one long night on a desolate stretch of desert highway. Dun, dun, dun. So I assume this is your first watch of this movie. Is that correct?
It is. And I do remember you recommending it whenever you came on for the episode that never was, King of the Road, Tales from the Crypt, which was...
Brad.
Brad. And our long discussion about Brad Pitt, I'm devastated that's the most upsetting part. But yes, I remember you recommending this, and I could totally see why that episode definitely made you think of Southbound.
Yeah. So here is the hook of Southbound. Here is the thing about it that holds it all together. Basically, all these people are on this road in this town, stuck. They can't get out because they are in hell. They are in purgatory. It's some kind of place of punishment. It's never defined, but you realize that at some point. And I remember when I first saw this, again, because religion is like my cinematic catnip, I was like, oh, they're all damned. And I was just in. So at what point did you realize that's what was happening here?
Well, as I kind of told you earlier, whenever I watched this, I unfortunately somehow skipped the first 10 minutes of the movie. So I missed the part where Jack and Mitch get got. And I start right as I believe Mitch is the one whose daughter I get there literally right as he's chasing his daughter around this house and he can't get to her. And every time he gets close to her, she disappears. And eventually I'm like, oh yeah, so he's in hell. So that's probably, the demonic creatures at the very beginning probably would have helped. But in my head, I figured it out immediately.
Okay, good. Good. Because it's one of those things where even from knowing that now when I watch the trailer, I'm like, oh yeah, you kind of get that. And the poster is like a pentagram. But let's be honest, horror movies, they slap satanic imagery all over their marketing all the time, whether it's actually satanic or not. So you just never know. So I'm glad that it came across clearly to you, even though you missed the beginning.
Yeah, but I saw it. I have since seen it, and it makes everything make a lot more sense, but we'll get to it.
Yeah. So one of the things that I think is interesting about this movie, because, of course, I guess we'll go ahead and dive into this piece of it, too, just because I don't want us to dance around it till the end. But I love how the way it begins and the way it ends are interlocked. And
exactly.
And it's just one big loop. You realize, oh, the end of this story is the beginning of the first one, and all of this is just going to keep going. And of course, that reminds me of the whole circles of hell setup, Dante's Inferno with the circles of hell. And I'm like, well, except for this one, I tried to apply okay, are each of these people guilty of one of the 7 deadly sins, or are each of them stuck in a circle of hell? And it doesn't exactly fit that way, but I was like, it's kind of cool that because it's just this cyclical story, that's a different take on the circles of hell, because these people are just reliving their nightmares over and over again.
Yeah.
Okay, so another thing I want to keep in mind as we talk about each of these is, what did each of these people do to deserve their fate and end up in this town?
Yes.
In some stories, it's explicitly stated, and in some stories, it's not, and we just kind of have to figure it out on our own. So keep that in mind as we go through. Okay, segment 1. This one is called The Way Out, and it was written and directed by Radio Silence. These are the guys who did the latest Scream movies. They did Ready or Not. They did Abigail. What am I forgetting? Well, VHS. They did a segment VHS.
But I wish I remembered exactly which one it is they did, because that might help. But yeah, Ready or Not and Scream and Abigail those are the only ones I can think of off the top of my head. But yeah.
And another reason that this movie was on my radar is because of Radio Silence, because when I was at the Overlook Film Fest in April, they were there. They premiered Abigail there. And so they were there doing a question and answer. And it was really cool to just hear them talk. I mean, anytime you get to see filmmakers and do a Q&A, it's always a lot of fun. I was listening to Mike Flanagan's podcast, and he had them on, and they were talking about kind of their entire filmography, and they were specifically talking about this movie and how I guess they had made a movie before this that didn't do very well. And the people at Bloody Disgusting produced this movie, and they gave them a shot at it. And I guess they were like, we're in movie jail. Do you trust us?
We're on probation.
And so I guess this movie was fun for them, and it was kind of a good experience after a bad experience. So it's been in my mind because of that, specifically because of Radio Silence. Okay, here we go. Mitch and Jack are on the run from mysterious floating creatures. Filled with remorse, Mitch looks at a photograph of his daughter Catherine as they drive down a nameless highway. Out in the desert, Mitch sees the creatures stalking them, but does not tell Jack. In desperation, the pair pulls up to a rundown gas station. Inside, the men witness strange events as the creatures stalk them from afar. As Mitch and Jack attempt to escape, they pull up to the same gas station further down the road. Jack tries to leave as the creatures close in on the pair and is killed. Mitch, believing that this is the fate he deserves, refuses to leave and instead follows the creatures to a nearby motel. He enters room 6255 and finds himself in a home that seems familiar. Hearing his daughter's voice, Mitch follows the sounds and finds an apparition of his daughter Catherine, who begs for his help. As he moves closer to his daughter, however, she continues to run away. Mitch is trapped in the hallway of the house, tormented until death by the regret that he was not able to help his daughter.
Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun. So I really love the initial setup where we get the whole vibe of the desert.
The radio.
And the radio. I love the GJ voice. And also, I think it's the devil.
Yeah.
There's not like concrete evidence for that, but like just some of the things he says and the way he talks, I'm like, I like to think that the DJ is the devil.
The devil is the DJ, actually. I love that idea. It definitely fits the narrative, especially like, I'm going to ramble, but yes, it fits very well. I agree.
Yeah. And also the little like wraiths, demon angel creature design is so original and very cool.
Those are pretty cool. I like their design a lot too. And I like how their design is, a little reminiscent of an angel too, with the wings.
The wings.
Because, they don't really ever explicitly say that angels are pretty. Angels always say, do not be afraid whenever they show up. So, who knows? Maybe they were angels in a weird messed up way.
Well, true. Or, demons. They're just fallen angels. Yeah.
Exactly.
See my Constantine episode if you want to hear a lot of rambling about that. So I guess I was going to ask you what you think they did to end up here. But since you didn't see the beginning, you already knew.
What's funny too is that I was like, I literally was exactly like, I was like, I wonder what he did to end up here. And I guess like, from my perspective, because I did see him running around the house endlessly, my perspective was, and she kept asking for help. So I knew that his sin was not that he was the one who killed her. I anticipated that his sin was he was neglectful to the point that he couldn't help her. And that's how she died. I guess whenever you see him walk in, there's like a lot of blood on the walls.
Yeah.
And so I think it can be assumed that maybe she died in a home invasion of some sort, which, kind of would make sense, I guess. But either way, it seems like she died, and it seems like she died brutally. Blood, like there's blood everywhere. So imagine whatever happened was not, clean.
Yeah. Well, and I didn't, like I said, it had been a long time. I hadn't seen this since 2016, so I didn't remember all the specifics. And I was like, it feels like they maybe broke out of prison or something. And I was like, I think they definitely murdered somebody. Like, I think that's how they ended up here. It was definitely murder. And so then when he gets trapped, I kind of thought Mitch might get out because he's trying to take responsibility. He's basically like, we are here because we deserve to be here, and Jack never accepts that, and so of course he gets dispatched by
that was pretty cool.
skeleton wraith demons. Yeah, it was. Yeah, it's like I said, it's a really that opening packs a really good punch for sure. So that one's pretty short. Anything else you want to talk about with that one?
No, I like the special effects, and I just want to give a shout out to the attendant character who was just like smoking a cigarette next to a gas pump. That does not, that should be another indicator that they are not in this actual plane, because I was like, there's no way. Some people. Maybe.
I also saw she had a name tag on that said Sutter, and I've seen people say that is a nod to Sutter Kane from In the Mouth of Madness. Have you seen that movie?
I have not seen it, but I did listen to the Wax and the Porpoise episode on it.
Oh, yeah. Which that's kind of like, that's a very things are not what they seem, sort of cyclical, stuck in us in a place kind of story. So that's not something that I would have arrived at on my own. But in my research, I came across that. So I was like, if that is an homage, it's a good one.
They also, and then in my little bit of research I did, whenever they walk in, there's a movie playing on the little television. And the guy that, the YouTube video, he said it was Circus of Souls, which...
Carnival of Souls.
Carnival of Souls. There we go. Yeah. So I guess it's something, I guess that may be another kind of like, because he said that it was related to the overall theme of the movie.
Yeah, the structure is a little, not the structure, but like the theme, the plot is a little bit the same. It's been a long time since I've seen that one too. But yeah, that one's, it's a hint, I think. Okay, so moving on to segment 2, which is called Siren. It was directed by Roxanne Benjamin, and she's done a bunch of friggin' stuff. She also directed a short in XX, which is an all-women anthology. She directed some of the, I think a couple shorts in the new Creep show that's on Shudder. She also directed some of the Sabrina TV show. And then a movie called Body at Brighton Rock, which again has been on my list forever. But Roxanne Benjamin is one of those women in horror that you see her popping up everywhere. She's doing it all.
I'm immediately a fan, and it makes me like this segment way more, knowing that, like, because it's about a girl group. So like knowing it's directed by a woman definitely is kind of like, oh, okay, that's cool. But I'm definitely going to have to check her out because I did like this one. I liked it a lot.
Ooh, all right. Okay, so... we see Mitch, he's stuck in the motel, right? So at the same motel are Sadie, Ava, and Kim. They're traveling musicians in a band called the White Tights. Leaving the motel and stalked by the floating creatures, their van's tire goes flat and they are forced to pull over. Stranded in the middle of the desert, they are picked up by a friendly, eccentric couple. In the backseat of their car, Sadie sees a bear trap. The band is taken to the couple's house farther down the road. Inside, the band is shown to their room. Sadie hears the woman mention their late friend Alex, but neither Ava nor Kim seem to notice. At dinner with the Kensingtons, who live nearby with twin sons, they are served a meal of burnt roast beef. Sadie, a vegetarian, politely declines. After dinner, Kim begins to blame Sadie for Alex's death, whereupon both Ava and Kim suddenly begin vomiting a black substance. Sadie gets help, and the people in the house give Ava and Kim a white liquid medicine to drink. Looks like milk. Sadie confronts her friends for their strange behavior and tries to persuade them to leave, and they refuse. They seem to be in a trance, and they decide to stay the night at the freaky house. That night, Sadie has a nightmare of Alex being killed in a car accident. Waking up in the middle of the night, Ava and Kim are gone. She finds them outside around a bonfire participating in a strange cult ritual with the others in the house. Investigating from the bush nearby, Sadie's foot becomes caught in the bear trap seen in the couple's car the day before. Hearing the commotion, Ava and Kim give chase as Sadie escapes the trap and moves into a nearby shed. Here, she is accosted by an apparition of Alex. Terrified, Sadie runs out into the road and hails an approaching car for help, only to get run over by a car in a cruel twist of fate. In the road behind her, one of the floating, enigmatic creatures can be seen watching Sadie. Oh. So you said you really liked this one. Lay it on me.
Yes. Well, I just love anything that features a girl group. Like, whenever I saw that they were a band, I was like, I love. And like, especially like, of course, female-centered bands. To me, they're always just like super cool. I loved their little van that they were in. And it's funny, the minute that the old couple pulled up, I was like, Satanists. Like, immediately. It's like, oh, yes, there they are. I found them. And of course, it's crazy because they're such like a seemingly nice couple offering, we got someone who can fix up your tire, all this other stuff. And immediately Sadie's like, nope. Like, she was being smart about it, which which makes me wonder, like, if she hadn't gone with them, maybe her fate would have been different. But at the same time, like, because I guess, I don't know, it's hard to like talk about certain things early on because I don't want to like spoil other things that are happening in later segments, but like
just do it. Just do it.
I go back and forth on, because obviously like what's his name, Lucas, and the next one, he ends up, I guess, pleasing these demons enough that they let him leave. And so like I feel like at this point this is why I think we're in purgatory and not necessarily hell, is because I think there is an option. If you play your cards right, you can get out. And so like obviously Sadie didn't play her cards right, but I also like, whenever I watch this in my mind, because she abandoned her friend and left her to die unknowingly or unknowingly, sometimes that doesn't necessarily matter in the eyes of the decider. You know, I figured her fate had already been decided, that like she got there and there was nothing that she really could do. The minute that they said like AAA doesn't know where we are, we're on like a strange, I was like, they're like, that's another point where I was like, well, they are in hell.
I think this is the first instance of I can't find myself on a map, which I find very unsettling.
Oh, terrifying. I told my friends this because we drove from Austin to Arizona last year, and our drive looked quite a bit like some of the drives in this one. So I was like, thank God I didn't watch this movie before we made that trip, because it was literally me and a group of 2 other girls. So it literally like we looked just like this group. But I think that may be also why I liked it, because it did fuel a little bit of the nostalgia of a wonderful trip. So that's probably where like my likeness for it comes. But also like, it's weird to say this as a Christian. I just love a satanic ritual. Like I love the different ways they do them in these fictional shows, of course.
Yeah. Well, it's very theatrical. And by the way, I loved that they chose to make the family like very sort of kitschy, like 50s, like the house. That was the cutest friggin' house. All that stuff. By the way, I think your immediate distrust of these overly nice people, it's evangelical trauma. Logan. You're like, red flag.
Like, no, exactly. Especially because, well, I mean, to be fair, the guy did get a little upset whenever she said no. He was like, why not? And like then they like at dinner, whenever she's like, oh, I should have told y'all I'm vegetarian. And that one lady was literally like, some of us don't have the luxury of choosing whether or not we can be vegetarian. And I was like, oh my God, like there was always something that was off about all these people. Or the twins. Weren't there supposed to be 4 of you? That was a weird thing to me. Was whenever they said, weren't there supposed to be 4 of you? Because it like that also kind of messed with my idea, my fantasy, if you will, not necessarily fantasy, but my idea of what was going on here. Because I was like, well, if they're there because of what happened to Alex, why are these boys bringing up a 4th person? But also in Sadie's visions of Alex, she's wearing the same white dress with like the weird collar on it. No,
it's very similar, if not the same. Like that seems like a choice.
So it almost feels too like maybe Alex somehow, because I mean, I'm assuming Alex passed away long ago, but maybe Alex somehow, whenever she died or whatever, found herself in this purgatory, or that's the thing. I don't know. But like, it did feel weird that Alex was also wearing the same thing.
I had not thought of that, but you might be right. And especially again, since this is a cyclical story and she died before the rest of them, was she there first? And she's already like lived some of this out. I like that. Yeah.
Just a thought.
It's like, what do you think? This is the most ambiguous as far as like why they're here. Like, what do we think they did to end up here?
That's what I don't know. And sometimes I wonder if, because I know they joke that they're like a smooth jazz band, but I imagine that they're a rock band because they talked about a drum kit, which you can have a drum kit in jazz, of course, too. But I imagine they're just like a rock girl group. And I mean, sex, drugs, and rock and roll, right? So I was wondering if maybe they ended up here, if not because of what happened to Alex, because once they said the 4 of you thing, I was kind of like rethinking everything. I was like, what if it's just like their careless life of, you know, drugs and careless, just like, I don't want to say relations, but like, what if that's just what led them to this purgatory?
Okay, I think this might be smart again because the cult in this segment is very satanic panic. Like they are textbook satanic panic. So if these girls have been sent to purgatory because of their their rock and roll lifestyle and they're like following the devil, right? That's what we would always hear about rock music and satanic panic, and then they end up with this cult family that is the epitome of that. Like that kind of fits.
Yep.
My brain.
Whenever they finished their prayer and one of the girls went, "Amen," and all of them went, I loved that so much. But it was funny that she, even though like you could tell the way that they were like, all right, I guess we're, but like also the guy was mentioning like the vessel, and she heard vessel and she like popped her eyes wide open. She was like, what do you mean providing these vessels? And then like you could tell they kind of don't believe in it. Right. Like they're kind of like, OK, we're going to do this to be polite because they've invited us into their home. They're going to help us. And then she says, amen. I think just kind of like maybe it's habit, you know, like you always got to say amen. But the way that they looked at her was funny.
I was thinking possibly because they sort of mentioned that like it's her fault. It's like Sadie's fault that Alex is dead. And they're like, you were screwing some guy or whatever. So I was wondering if maybe it's possible that Alex had a drug overdose. And like maybe Sadie was supposed to be with her and like Sadie was off with a guy instead of paying attention to her friend and maybe she drug overdosed. There's no specific evidence for that. But again, the rock band, the lifestyle, that was kind of my first thought.
That was something I thought about too. I think in her vision though, didn't she see Alex get hit by a car?
Yeah, well then there's that. Yeah. So I'm like, did she get hit by a car then?
Well, did she get hit by a car or was she unknowingly seeing her own future?
Foreshadowing, exactly. Yeah, because I did remember of all of this movie, the next segment is a segment that I remember the most. And so I remembered that she got hit by a car. And so I already was thinking about that. So in my mind, I might have been thinking, oh, it's foreshadowing. Because to me, it's not 100%. It's just not 100% clear what happened to Alex.
Honestly, the overdose thing really does just make the most sense, though. I watched The Dirt, the Motley Crue movie. I know how it goes. Right?
Watch VH1 behind the music. Right, I know what happened.
So, I mean, that was really like, also, I was thinking about that while I was making dinner tonight. I was like, what if she overdosed? So it could be she was drunk and she got hit by a car, or she overdosed. I think that Sadie foreshadowing her own death by seeing the car getting hit and Alex overdosing, those make the most sense.
Yeah. Again, this is like sort of the beauty of this anthology is that we're in a supernatural place. And so to me, we don't need to have all the gaps filled in. I was on a Reddit thread where people were just irate because they were like, there are no rules and there are unanswered questions. And what about this? And what about this? And I'm like, you're missing the beauty of the entire movie. Yeah. So this segment really is maybe the most ambiguous. There's another one later on that's also pretty ambiguous. But I honestly, this discussion has made me like this segment more because this one was kind of lower on my list. But all of this has made me appreciate it more for sure.
I will say before we move on, I don't necessarily think that the other two girls, which granted, the other two girls are obviously recruited to this satanic cult. And I think that they are going to be stuck in this town forever. I don't know what they did to deserve that, though, because like the whole point, I guess, was that like all of them were going to be judged. So like we kind of know more or less why Sadie is being judged, but why are the other two, other than like I kind of mentioned before, maybe it was their life of sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
Yeah, I mean, that's really why that fits so well, because it doesn't make sense that they would all be punished if it's just Sadie. And like Sadie seems like a good person. Like she seems fine, you know?
Yeah, like unless Sadie was supposed to be trip sitting for her friend.
Yes.
I don't know that necessarily, because like you can't really blame people's deaths on anyone. You know, that's hard, obviously, especially not knowing all the details. Right. So did Sadie really even necessarily deserve to be judged for what happened to her? I can't say for sure. I can see why, but.
And that does give a little bit of credence to something else I came across, which is So we believe that this is some place of like punishment, but also, is this a physical place that you can just stumble upon? And then if the circumstances of your life are right, you basically are taken beyond the veil into this like supernatural plane.
I was going to kind of talk about this more once we had finished, but like the video that I watched,
hold it if you want to.
we can hold. I want to hold it because
okay.
I think it'll make more sense once we talk about all of them. But I do want to talk about that. I have
stick a pin in it. That'll be a good wrap up. Okay, so Sadie's fleeing from the cult, from whatever. She runs out into the road.
Boom.
And she gets hit by a car, and we're taken to the next segment, which is called The Accident. And The Accident is my favorite segment. It was directed by David Bruckner, who did the latest Hellraiser movie. He also directed The Night House, The Ritual, and of course, he did VHS. I'm a big fan of David Bruckner. So I was not surprised to see his name on this segment.
I need to watch The Night House. I've seen actually all of these other movies. I'm kind of shocked that I've seen almost all of his movies. What are your... Well, never mind. I was going to ask, people love or hate The Ritual? I personally love it, but I know some people like, hate it.
No, I really like it. I really like it. So the driver of the car, Lucas, talks to his wife, Claire, on the phone. Distracted, he does not see Sadie, and she is hit by his car. Lucas exits the car and sees Sadie lying on the ground, critically injured, and calls 911. However, he is unable to tell the dispatcher where he is. A certified EMT gets on the line to help. The voices of the dispatcher and the EMT tell Lucas to drive Sadie to the nearby town where he finds a medical facility. Entering the facility, he finds it completely abandoned. After searching for help, the dispatcher opts to guide Lucas through performing life-saving surgery. A third voice, that of a doctor, gets on the line. The voices convince Lucas to reach into Sadie's body cavity and manually compress her lung, which kills her. The voices begin to laugh at Lucas, and he hangs up. He tries to escape the hospital, but finds that all the doors are locked. Shortly after, his phone rings again. The dispatchers persuade Lucas to talk about the incident. They agree that Lucas did not deserve this and promptly tell him that he can leave. They mysteriously provide him with access to clean clothes and a new car, so it will be as though nothing happened. Lucas, hesitant to leave, is reassured that he will not need to worry about Sadie's death. He leaves the facility, enters the car, and drives away. As he does, one of the floating creatures can be seen on the edge of the road overseeing the events. This segment, to me, is the only one that is scary.
Not only is it scary, it is very like, which I obviously unsettling is like also scary, but like the body horror in it. Body horror typically doesn't scare me, but it made me so...
The leg.
Oh, the leg, him reaching into her body and compressing her lung was crazy. I was like, please don't make me watch. Oh, we're watching it. Oh, we're watching it.
Yeah. So even before we get to like all of that business, just when he gets to the hospital, I'm like, what is this town? What is this hospital? And like an abandoned hospital, any hospital, but especially an abandoned hospital where like clearly things are not right. Ugh. So it's already like really unsettling. And so then when he has to start trying to revive her, the scene has been set.
And like, it's crazy. Like, of course, putting yourself in his shoes, you're like, what would I do? Listening to these freaks on the phone, which he called 911. So in his mind, he is talking to legit people. And I don't know how far I would have followed them, especially once I see that the hospital's empty. I'm kind of like, okay, I guess I'm going to go try to find another one. Would that have changed his judgment? You know, like he listened to everything they said. And then at the end, they let him go. And of course, like him having a whole brand new car that's undamaged, that looks exactly the same as the inside as the car that he was in. That, of course, is going to lead credence to the like supernatural place. I think it's somewhere in the middle, which like we can get to later. But that's like, obviously, I think I would be remiss if I didn't at least mention like his car is the exact same. All his books, all his stuff is all over this. It's the exact same.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's because maybe he is not getting away. They're sending him down the road and he's going to come back around and do this again.
And it'll be just like the guys at the beginning, the loop, which makes sense because he drives right past that place called the Trap.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I love how that was barely in the shot, but just enough where you definitely see it. But this segment, like I said, it's the only one that like I really remembered when this segment was on. Like I wasn't looking at my phone. I wasn't looking at my notes. I was like glued to the screen this entire segment. And like, that's hard to do with any horror these days, you know, when you're just like chilling at home. And so for me, it was just super effective again, like, especially at the end. So after he like compresses her lung and she dies and they start laughing at him.
That was crazy. You're like, yes.
Cause you're kind of not sure like and then you know, like, oh no.
Well, the minute that like a third voice came into the picture, well, I kind of was I knew something was up while these two women were talking to him. But the minute that a third voice comes in and suddenly we have a surgeon on the line, like we haven't had him this whole time.
And they're talking to him as if they can see him.
But then he says, I'm a surgeon. And then suddenly the lights flash on. So that's another way where you're suddenly, and I think he's not weirded out enough by that, but at the same time, he looks
bewildered. Yeah, he looks bewildered. Like, but also he hit somebody. He's freaking out.
He's got a dead.
Yes, he doesn't want her to die. Like, clearly, he did the right thing and like fessed up to it, and he doesn't want her to die. So it's extreme circumstances for this poor man.
Yeah, that it's crazy because I wonder how things, obviously we wouldn't see it in our mind, but how things might have been different if he had tried to leave her behind, if he would have just kept, like you said, maybe the same thing, if it kept looping, you know, I'm assuming, because that's where it kind of goes back to the, like, are you damned once you're here? Or is there like even a chance you're ever going to get out? Which is an interesting concept. Yeah.
Well, because all of when he's like, I don't deserve this. And they're like, oh, yeah, you don't deserve it. Like, none of that sounds genuine to me. It sounds like they're taunting him. So when they're like, oh, yeah, just, get in the car. It'll be like nothing ever happened. I'm like, that's not real. Like, that's not genuine. No. And that's what led me to think he's going to get in this car and he's going to be right back here.
Which led me to think, too, like, whenever he said, do I have to worry about what happened back there? I think he means like, legally, or maybe at this point he's figured out, because he called 911 and it's not like he called a different random number. I think he knows, well, obviously he looked at his car, he knows something weird is going on.
Oh yeah.
The only reason why I think I would believe that maybe they actually did let him go is because, I know we're going to get into it in a second, but they cut to the woman who was talking to him on the phone, and she hangs up the phone and then she moves on. Yeah. So that's, I guess, the only reason why that's why I give any credit to the idea of maybe he did get away, but I definitely think it's entirely possible that he's also on loop now.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, because like her shift, is she going to clock in tomorrow and have the exact same conversation with him that she just had with him just now? It's something to think about.
Definitely.
And also then, to answer the question of this episode, what did Lucas do to end up here? Why is he here?
I mean, he was reckless driving, texting on his phone. And I feel like at the end of the day, a lot of these things boil down to neglect. Like, was Mitch neglecting his daughter to the point that somehow, granted, we don't know really the circumstances of the death of Mitch's daughter, but he couldn't save her. Was that because he, had neglected to do something that he needed to do? And then same thing with Sadie. She neglected her friend Alex, which led to her death. And now he was being neglectful, I guess, just behind the wheel. And obviously, like, I'm not going to say in his defense, but he also did explain it. He was like, it was the middle of the night. He did not mention the phone part, though. I don't think he did, because he was very intently looking. He had no eyes on the road. He was very intently looking at the dresses that his wife was sending to him and, judging them. So obviously at the same time, like, he was, you could say, reckless driving, because he was also going like super fast. So I feel like hitting Sadie recklessly could have been the thing that got him there, but it also, you know, in the event that maybe he didn't get out, it would have to have been something different.
Right, because he's on that road where she is, which is not in the real world. So it's like he's on that road for something, unless, like you said, this is a real and not real place at the same time, which again we'll discuss further in a little bit. But the only kind of thought I have, other than just the obvious, you know, not paying attention while he's driving, is I was like, is he cheating on his wife? Like, we assume, like, he's looking at pictures of this woman and like helping her pick out a dress. And I'm like, is that maybe not his wife?
Claire may not be his wife. That is, I did not think about that while I was watching it, but now that you're saying it, because at no point does he explicitly refer to Claire as his wife, and they just say, go home to your wife. So maybe Claire wasn't his wife. Yeah. Interesting. Now
there's no super solid evidence to support that, but it's a possibility. And then also it makes you wonder, like, in the real world, like, did he hit and run somebody and he's been sent here and he makes a different choice here, and that's why they let him go, because he did like atone and make the right choice this time. So they do actually let him go. See, I love the possibilities that not having clear answers gives us.
I was going to say, this is like, I usually don't love ambiguity in certain films, but I feel like with this movie specifically, it works like very well to its advantage. Because we've already listed like 12 different stories for like all these characters, and it's up to us to decide.
They very intentionally have like built the world and the format, so it's not just sloppy, you know. Exactly. I feel like there are some intentional gaps so that we have to really like think about it and decide. Okay, should we move on to Jailbreak?
Yes, let's.
Okay. This one was directed by Patrick Horvath, which is somebody I've never heard of. And I looked up his creds, and he did special effects on The Night House with David Bruckner.
So he's probably David's homie.
Yeah, but I don't think he's ever directed anything else. So again, this is where anthologies are great. Whereas this person may never direct a feature film or whatever, he got a chance to do it here. And while it's not like my favorite segment, it's a fun little segment. So as you mentioned, Sandy, the dispatcher that was on the phone with Lucas, watches him drive away from a nearby payphone. She hangs up and walks into a bar named The Trap. Across the parking lot, Danny gets out of his car. Inside, the bartender, Al, reprimands Sandy for leaving the door open. An argument ensues between the two and Warren, another patron in the bar. Danny barges in with a shotgun and demands to know where his sister is. Warren, revealed to be a demon, cuts a gash into Danny's back. Danny blows off Warren's clawed hand with the shotgun. Danny takes Al hostage and forces him to drive to his sister's location, the back room of an ice cream parlor. There are demons Danny cannot see closing in on him as Al leads him through a secret entrance into a hidden room. Inside the room, he finds his sister Jessie applying a tattoo to a patron's back. Danny tells Jessie that he has come to rescue her, and she tells him that she is there by her choice and refuses to leave. Danny kills Al and kidnaps his sister, carrying her to his car. The locals, all demons, chase Danny as he drives quickly away. They drive for some time and then stop when the road runs out into the desert. Jessie begs Danny not to go off the road. But Danny, with the locals in pursuit, decides he has no other option. The car shakes violently as the pair drive out into the desert, and eventually Danny stops the car. Jessie reveals that she killed their parents and that she deserves to live in the town.
Casually.
The demons pull Danny out of the car. Jessie leaves him behind and drives away. She smiles and turns on the radio. As she drives, one of the floating creatures can be seen in the moonlight, overseeing Jessie's plight. I thought the monsters in the bar, the monster bar, 10 out of 10.
I love a monster bar.
So fun. I loved how wonky that whole setup was.
Yeah, the noise that he let out whenever Danny like cut off his hand or shot off his hand I love a good howl, you know, a good yelp, if you will.
Yelp.
But yeah, I will say I did kind of like the world building in this story. And I think this story is another reason why I think we're somewhere in the middle, because there are certain places where Danny can't see. He doesn't know what's going on. And of course, it's kind of revealed that this little eye tattoo is how you're going to get entrance into some of these hidden places that are not as normal as everywhere else around them. And I thought that was a really cool, like whenever the eye blinked and he was talking to him, and you can see his view through that eye. Very Del Toro of them. I'm curious though, what do you think happened to Danny? Because obviously you see the naked people are taking the clothes off of him. So I think it can be assumed that Danny's kind of falling into the same fate as them. Like he's going to be a naked demon person wandering the desert, I guess. But like, I don't know. What are your thoughts on like...
I mean, yeah, I think he's just sort of taken by those. And, you know, Jessie, who lives there, is like frightened of that. She's like, don't go out there. You don't want to go out there. So it seems like even maybe the locals don't go out there. So those are like maybe lost souls, or people who didn't belong there in the first place, but came anyway. And I think there's lots of, in Dante's Inferno, there's lots of different, like every circle of hell has very specific like imagery. And so the naked people being like in the desert, there's, I think it's, and it doesn't really fit this story, but I think it's lust, where you're blown about by winds. And that's sort of what it reminded me of. So I think he was probably just, taken by those folks.
The naked people made me think of Hereditary, because of the naked people at the end of that movie, and you know, that whole thing, which that is just like a side thing. But yeah, and also like you can tell that Jessie doesn't, like how you said, she kind of like is freaked out by that space. Even she's like, you may need to blow my head off because I don't want to be out here.
Yeah, that was all very like, sort of like we learned a lot in that segment, but also like we got more questions presented to us, because like also Jessie is like, she's chilling. She's a local. Like she said, I love it here. I belong here. But she's there because she murdered her parents. Yeah. So that's interesting, because it's like, oh, okay. So this place, whatever it is, doesn't have to be punishment necessarily, because she loves it there. She fits in there. And then also like the patrons at the bar, they're monsters or demons or creatures or whatever, but like they're just living a normal life. Yeah. You know?
Which I think is the life that Sadie's bandmates are headed for. Because like I said, I feel like they're gathering people for this town. Unlike in certain other movies where they say they need a certain amount of souls, it sounds like they just want company, I guess. But also, whenever Jessie said that she liked it there, it made me wonder if, well, at first I thought that the next segment was going to be whenever it shows her driving, she doesn't just drive off, which obviously like everything kind of links into each other. And you see how this one links into the next story. But for a while, I thought that we were about to see Jessie's retribution, because it shows her like continuing to drive. So I was like, maybe she's not going to love it here as much anymore. Like, because she kind of admitted like to her brother that she killed their parents because she wanted to. But also like maybe she's just one of those, I don't know. See, that's the thing. Like it's weird that this place doesn't have to be, I guess, necessarily a terrible fate, at least for now.
Yeah, this was like, especially after the accident being so serious and such a downer, this was such a different facet of the story, and such almost a lighthearted, like fun facet of the story. So I appreciated that like little bit of levity. And it feels completely different than the others for sure. I also wondered, like, I'm like, well, how did Danny get here? Yeah. You know, because he said he's been looking for her. So again, it's like, did he just physically come here, or did he like commit suicide to end up here? Like, how did he get here?
That is the question, because like, and I think that's why they were getting so on to that woman about the door, because I think that if that door stays open,
people can see it.
Normal people from the outside can see it. Sorry, there's someone zooming around my apartment complex, and I thought that Barry was growling.
Oh,
It's just a car.
Oh boy, our pets. Do you even have a podcast if you don't have pet interruption?
Gotta love them.
Yeah.
They're just mad that I'm not giving them the constant attention they normally get.
Yeah. So yeah, the door thing is really interesting. And I loved the like banter about the door. And I'm like, why are we fussing at each other about the door? You know, and then we find out. So speaking of the door, this leads us into the last segment, which is called The Way In. The first segment was called The Way Out. The last segment's called The Way In. They're both directed by Radio Silence, which I think is really genius to bookend with the same filmmakers. Keeps everything neat and tidy. So Jim, our main character in the last segment, exits the bathroom at freezing over. And sees Jesse walk back to the secret door. Jem then rejoins her parents, Kate and Daryl, to finish their food. Jem is going to college, and this is their last weekend together before she leaves. As they leave freezing over, someone in the parking lot watches them get into their car and drive to their vacation house. They are about to have dinner when 3 masked men break into the house. Daryl and Kate are caught while Jem hides. Daryl realizes that he knows who the men are and what they want and begs them to spare his family. One of the men whispers to Kate what Daryl did, and she is astonished at her husband's secret. The same man then says, "Eye for an eye," and kills her in front of her husband. Jem then stabs one of the men in the back with scissors and takes the bat he was holding. Surprisingly, the other 2 tell her to leave. She runs away, and they kill Daryl. As he is dying, the man in the mask holds up the photograph of Catherine that Mitch was looking at in The Way Out to be the last thing he ever sees. After Daryl is dead, they remove their masks, and they are recognizable as Mitch and Jack. As they are leaving, Jem returns and fights back. She injures them badly, but when she's about to escape, Mitch kills her. Accidentally, I believe. The men feel guilty because they went too far, but it is too late. Outside, the ground opens up as the enigmatic floating creatures from below come through the dead bodies. The men try to escape, but the third masked man is dragged down by the tentacles from beneath the earth. As the ground behind them continues to crumble, Mitch and Jack drive away. They are chased by one of the floating creatures, but Jack accelerates and runs it down. Jack says they are going home as they get back on the highway. Mitch looks at a photograph of his daughter, Catherine, as they drive away. Out in the desert, Mitch sees the creatures stalking them, but does not tell Jack.
And the rest is history.
Yes, and the last scene is the first scene.
Yeah, where he says, F this.
So one of the things that really stood out to me in this segment are all the little DJ quips. Like right at the beginning of it, he says, every road's got to end somewhere. He says, go ahead and make some mistakes. You can always get it right the next time. I really loved all of that stuff. I mean, I love it throughout the whole movie, but those 2 phrases in particular, I was like, those are like some of the phrases that make me think, yes, the devil.
Yeah, that is the devil.
He's running the show.
It's funny, too, because obviously the devil, he loves to tempt you and he loves to lie to you. So, like, the radio almost makes it seem like, you know, and I guess this is where not watching the first segment did like affect my watching experience, because at the end I was like, that's it?
What?
I was like, they just get away? Like literally. And I recognized Mitch as the guy from the beginning. So I was like, well, I guess we at least know that he doesn't necessarily get away. So it made, and that's why I probably should have asked questions. Also, no title card, no opening credits. Like, what was I thinking? I should have like gone back and asked questions. But I remember I watched it and I was like, that makes me so unhappy. And I was like, I feel like all the male characters in this movie, like either get killed off screen or not, but like all the women, you see them get brutalized, all these other things. And so then watching the first part of the movie, I was like, oh, I see. And so it literally changed my entire perspective on the movie, which is good because it ended up really making me appreciate this movie. And I will say, for my watching experience overall, I really wish that I had seen that first 10 minutes, because the reveal they make after they've killed mom and dad and they all take their masks off, and they even kind of do the like, it's a reveal, like with the music, which maybe I didn't love, but I can respect it. If I had watched it in a theater, it probably would have really been like, whoa. But yeah, I thought it was really cool. I really liked the way that they tied it in. And I think it also kind of helps play into the like the loop idea, because it starts where it ends. And I think that's really clever. I thought that was genius.
It adds a richness to all the other stories. And you kind of go like, oh.
Yeah.
You know.
And I really appreciate the way that it ties everything together. It's also crazy though, because like while you see these little demon things from the very beginning of the movie and you see them sprinkled in throughout, it kind of makes sense. So the reason why I wanted to kind of wait until the end to talk about whether or not we were in hell or in a real place is because the video that I watched, they kind of explained it as like, if you're killed in this place by other humans, you kind of become one of these. The guy in the video, he called them Reapers, like the Grim Reaper almost. He's like, so if you die in this place, or if you die in this town by the hand of other humans, like, I guess you're not necessarily the one being judged, which is another reason why I was so confused about this family. I was like, I don't see why they deserve. Obviously, Dad probably deserved his fate, because whatever Dad did, is Dad the one who killed Caitlin? Like,
I think both of them are in on it. Her parents are in on it too, because like her mom's in on it too, because her mom is like, you told. Like, so there was like knowing in her eyes, like, we're in this together, and so she's looking at him like, you told our secret.
I thought that she was saying, I thought she was like bewildered at what he did, and she said, you told, and then she like didn't finish. I thought she was gonna say like, you told me, and then I thought she was gonna say that he lied to her.
I mean, you could be right, but her tone and her inflection to me was like, you told our secret.
Yeah. No, I think that makes more sense.
That's how it seemed. And then that's why they killed her too. It's not just, wasn't just to get back at him, but they killed her too, because she was responsible. And to me, it's like, yeah, I think it's some kind of like trafficking situation. Like for some reason, Dad strikes me as like, Dad has money. And the reason why Dad has money is because he's trafficking, or he is a hitman and he like killed this girl for hire or something, like,
or he was sex trafficking her in this motel. That
makes a lot of sense.
And that deserves retribution, if you ask me.
Yeah. I also saw a theory that Jim is grown up Caitlin. They somehow
they kidnapped her,
ended up with her. Yeah.
No, that does kind of make sense, because I did see some like similarities in their like facial features. Like they got really similar people to play. So that would make sense if like they went in and they killed like Mitch's wife to steal Caitlin. That could
and then Mitch accidentally kills his own daughter inadvertently.
That is even crazier. See, if that's...
Yeah, the only thing with that though is I'm like, I don't think he'd be willy-nilly stabbing whoever runs around the corner if he knows his own daughter.
If he knows it's his daughter. Also, he'd probably react. But that would make sense why they, in a way, like let her go. And he kept yelling, like, we let you go. Because I'm assuming that, like, even if that's his daughter, which, I mean, the picture that he has of her shows she'd be old enough to recognize her dad. Well, I would think so, at least, but I don't know what it's like.
Yeah, you would think so.
So at least you would recognize that it's him, like, once all is said and done. But at the end of the day, like, she was trying to avenge her parents, which I kind of appreciated that, because it shows at the beginning, whenever they're talking about her and she's like in the bedroom, and they're like, I'm just worried she's not going to learn how to like stand up for herself. And so like, in a way, she kind of did learn how to stand up for herself. Unfortunately, it cost her everything, but she figured it out. But that's why I kind of like the theory of like, if you're not necessarily an innocent, because also like if mom and dad were bad people and they were in on it, they also turn into Reapers, because the Reapers like come out of their bodies. You know, like if you're killed by, I guess, another human and not one of the demons or your own stupidity, I guess you become one of these Reapers. And that's at least the concept that I saw in one of the videos. I don't know if that necessarily would be like the right answer to that, but that's why I think it's definitely like somewhere in the middle of like, you pass into here and like this is whenever your test starts, and whether or not you come out is up to you. But also, I do think that the concept of this being like, once you're here for good, I think both fit, I guess, if that makes sense.
I tend to like my horror to be a little bleak. And so I think that's why, for me, my reading is that, of course, Lucas didn't get out. No one gets out. This is just a big cycle. That's all it is.
I appreciate the idea more of Lucas not successfully getting out, mainly because, as I already mentioned, none of the women in this movie get out, so I don't think it's fair that the man does.
I'm like, if the teenage daughter doesn't get to make it out, then I don't think anybody gets to make it out.
Exactly. Because of all the people in this movie, I think she is the only person who is like truly innocent to our knowledge. I don't think that at that age she would have. Now, you know, who knows? Maybe she was like, well, obviously she's not like Jessie and killed her own parents because her parents. But like, obviously we don't know everything, but I just don't think that she was supposed to be damned is like, I guess, unfortunately, I guess she is damned simply by like association with her parents, which I also don't think is fair. But I mean, in heaven and hell, things aren't fair sometimes, I guess. Or at least in hell.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's kind of like Sadie and her bandmates. If Sadie is the one who's guilty, why are her bandmates subjected to this? Is it just because they happen to be together? You know, when she's like passing through this plane, who knows? Are they innocent bystanders? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, the devil wants one and all, so he'll take what he can get.
Okay. Oh, you know what I want to do is I found this I found it. It's just on Wikipedia.
I discovered.
I found this list. Easter eggs and hidden meanings in this movie.
Okay.
We've talked about a lot of this, but I just wanted to like roll down the list really quick because I found it kind of fun. The truck from The Way Out is visible in the Friesen Over parking lot at the beginning of The Way In. The house is the same in both The Way Out and The Way In, and many of the same shots are used, including of the decorative lights outside and when Jim walks down the same hallway where Mitch gets trapped. In The Way Out, the creatures stalk Mitch and Jack in exactly the same fashion that Mitch and Jack stalk the family in The Way In.
Whoa.
First from afar, before closing in, and again, similar shots are used in both. Again, radio silence, talented men. Jack is grabbed by the creature in the bathroom with a t-shirt, which is what he used to kill Kate. The shaking in Roy's cafe is the sound made when the ground opens up in The Way In, implying that these creatures are below the diner. I did notice that. We heard that like twice. The motel room that Mitch enters is room 6255 in The Way Out, the same as the house's address in The Way In. Also, the street name is Bethel, which has like religious connotations. And that one is not from Wikipedia. That one is from my brain.
You just know.
Yeah, Bethel. It means house of God. In the Bible, Bethel was the name given to the spot where Abraham built an altar. Also, the location of Jacob's ladder, the Jacob's ladder situation when Jacob was fleeing his brother Esau. So Bethel is like commonly a place, like a holy place, an altar, a Thanksgiving type situation. I don't know how that relates here exactly, but it's worth mentioning. Okay, let's see. The mask that Mitch wears in The Way In is visible on the table in the last shot of The Way Out. And it is what he was looking at when he first hears his daughter giggle. The DJ's voiceover, who's Larry Fessenden, by the way. Like indie horror giant, and also, in my opinion, the devil. The DJ's voiceover is in both segments. However, the ending version has slightly different dialogue, implying that the loop is not the same every time, and that the characters have the option of making better choices with the possibility that they may be allowed to escape should they cease to make the same wrong choices time and time again. We've discussed.
Yes.
That's up for debate.
Yeah, it's hard for me to ask about this movie because I'm essentially spoiling the movie by asking it. But have you ever seen the movie Triangle?
Yes, I have.
I could not stop thinking about that movie, which is funny whenever you said the loop is not always the same, because as we saw in her movie, the loop definitely is not always the same. But if we go back to Lucas, is Lucas just going to like drive up on a parking lot full of the same cars, all with the different, like, different wreckage on them?
Southbound, Triangle 2.
Yeah. Then whenever you said Lucas doesn't ever get out, I was like, all I can see now is like this locker room is just full of bloody clothes. Oh my God. And he just pulls up on this hospital and goes into a different room.
How terrifying would that be, though?
Dude,
I mean, it's terrifying in Triangle.
Well, in Triangle, they're not, at least the other characters are fully not aware of, but not to get all into that, but I could not stop thinking about Triangle all day whenever I was thinking about this movie.
Yep. Okay. Anything else you want to talk about? Are you ready to give your final thoughts on Southbound?
No, I think we covered everything.
All right. What are your final thoughts on Southbound?
So, you had asked me this morning, I would have told you I did not like it, but fortunately for us, I really, really like this movie a lot. And I think that this is one that, I guess it's hard to say like the rewatch value, but I guess we can hear what your thoughts are on that in a minute. I think this is one that I could definitely come back to. The desert is my personal hell as well. So like hell being in a desert fully just kind of makes sense too for this movie. But I love that it takes place on like an unnamed highway. And I really loved the way that it starts at the end. I love all the way that the stories interlock where it's very seamless. But like, unlike other movies, you don't come back to different groups throughout the movie, which is what I was expecting. So whenever it like the seamless way that it moved between segments was just so cool to me. And it was a shock in like a good way. I think that people who are lucky enough to watch this from start to finish in order are in for a wonderful watching experience. That's really something that would have like gagged me. And it, in retrospect, I still greatly appreciate it. So yeah, I think it's really awesome. And I love the ambiguity of it. Like I said, that's not normally not my favorite thing in the world, but with this movie, I think that like ambiguity is like, you have to, because I mean, like you said, years later, the discourse I think lives on. So it's a great anthology for sure. This is how you got to do it if you're going to make a movie. I guess not to this 100% extent, because there are other different styles that are successful. But I think this one works way better than, say, a wraparound segment in VHS. So, yeah.
I mean, I echo a lot of that. I think first and foremost, I think that Southbound is it's a lot of fun. Mm-hmm. And like you said, it excels where I think a lot of anthology films fail. And then it has just a really cohesive theme and a wraparound that really neatly ties the whole thing together. As with most anthologies, there are a few gaps and like a few uneven places that could be filled in with more time. But I'm really satisfied with what we got for the most part. And I think this movie was like an hour and a half, an hour and 45. Mm-hmm. Didn't drag us on for 2.5 hours or whatever. And I think we get what we need. And of course, we don't necessarily need an explanation for every detail because they have established that we are in a supernatural location. So it's okay when there are unexplained things or we don't understand how everything exactly works. Again, you'd have a super long movie if you had to like explain all those things. And I also appreciate that they don't outline every person's like sin or mistake. Yeah, because as we've done, I had thoughts and like as we talked, I have different thoughts. And it just really allows you to like dig deeper and form your own conclusions, which is half the fun. And while this does fit into the religion and horror category for me, it's also not trying to be like a super deep movie. I don't think it's trying to like say anything earth shattering. Mm-hmm. So first and foremost, like I said, I think this movie is fun and it's kind of like your typical morality tale, mm-hmm. Kind of like Tales from the Crypt can be, but while also giving us like an alternate landscape for what the afterlife and like hell might look like. So when I first saw this movie back in 2016, I got more than I expected. I just remember really expecting it to be just a typical whatever small release, you know, and then was just so pleasantly surprised. I dug it a lot and I enjoyed it again on a second watch. So I do feel like this movie is one that a lot of people have not seen, and I am going to continue to recommend it, especially to anthology fans.
Yes, I'm very glad that you recommended it because I feel like I love movies that take place like I like on the highway, on the road, especially in the South, even though I did just say the desert is like my personal hell. That's just because I'm scared of the desert. But I do think the desert is also a very, very, very cool place.
What then would be recommendations for other movies if people like Southbound, other than the anthologies we already covered?
Yes, I was going to say, because definitely like King of the Road, the Tales from the Crypt episode featuring a young Brad Pitt. If you like this kind of theme for at least like the setting, if you like this overall kind of like desert setting and cars and stuff, nice little 20-minute episode. Other than that, like other than the things that we've, I guess, already talked about, it's kind of hard to pinpoint exactly. Did you have, I'm assuming you have other ones that I got it's whenever it comes to the recommendation segment, I get all like, what movie have I ever watched?
part of it, Logan, is that how long have you been watching horror movies? 5 years, would you say?
Yeah, fall of 19. So 5 years.
I've been watching horror movies for 35 years. So
you got some time on me.
There's a lot in here. And it's also just like a little habit of mine. Anytime I watch something, my brain just goes to like all the other things it reminds me of. So hence why is it a category on my podcast? So Triangle is the very first thing on my list.
There you have it. I already ruined that one too.
Yeah. So Triangle, check it out, please. Silent Hill is another great, we're stuck in some alternate place, another great one. And I've covered it on this show. Me and Jacqueline talked about it in February. Okay, so there's some other things besides horror movies. There is my favorite horror fiction podcast, No Sleep podcast. There are a couple stories called Rules of the Road, and it's this weird, you're driving down a desolate highway and this DJ comes on and he's just talking like a regular DJ, and all of a sudden he starts saying weird stuff, and then weird stuff happens while you're out on the road and you have to follow these rules, or like those stories are cool. There are more. That podcast in general is just great. There's like 8 bajillion hours of free content. So go there. Another podcast that's very eerie is called Goblin Market, and there is an episode called Rest Stop, where again this guy's out on the road and he stops at this creepy rest stop and creepy things happen.
Oh my goodness.
Another on the road story is called Chattery Teeth. It's a Stephen King short story. I cannot remember which collection it's in, but this guy stops at this dusty rest stop and he buys this big pair of chattery teeth for his kid, like those novelty teeth with like the feet on them. And chaos ensues and someone gets what they deserve for being naughty.
Oh my God.
It's a great story. And there's also there is a short story version of it. There's a movie called Quicksilver Highway that's an anthology. And Chattery Teeth is in there, but I will say the story is much better than the short. So read the story first and then maybe go watch the short. No Country for Old Men. Mm-hmm. Not horror, but genre, desert, weird villain, great vibes. If you haven't seen No Country for Old Men, you got to do it. Another desert horror movie, The Hills Have Eyes. It might crush you, and I would say watch the 2006 version. The original Wes Craven version is not great. Yeah, it's one of those that most of the time we do not recommend remakes, but this time we do.
Is The Hills Have Eyes remake the one is that the infamous one that everyone talks about? I have mostly been like, I don't know about that one.
Well, there is one scene that I will not watch. There's one scene that I fast forward. It's a very violent movie. It was made by Alexandre Aja, who is the French director who did High Tension.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's all I needed.
Yeah. So it is very violent, but I would say you can probably handle it, except for there's one assault scene that I won't watch. Other than that, it's great. And then also there's a movie from the 80s called The Hitcher, where a kid picks up a hitchhiker out on the road and good things do not happen. Rutger Hauer is in it. And my last recommendation in my long list of recommendations is there is a short called This Way to Egress, directed by David Slade. And it is in Nightmare Cinema. Nightmare Cinema is an anthology film that I do not love, even though Uncle Mick Garris, produced it. And I love the man, but I do not love this anthology, except for David Slade's short. Again, it's called This Way to Egress. It's in black and white. It is so weird, and I love it. So seek it out.
If I may add, I thought of a couple more while you were talking.
Yes, please do.
There's another episode of Tales from the Crypt. I wish I had season numbers and episode numbers.
That's what Google's for.
It's called Carry on Death. I think that one's the first episode of season 3, maybe. Desert morality tale. And then not in the same vein, but Revenge is another beloved desert movie of mine. You could call it a morality tale in a weird way. Those are the other two that I thought of, but definitely I have some on my to-do list now for sure.
Yeah, you have more like I need to start like putting all of these recommendations in the show notes or something.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea.
Yeah. So Logan, thank you so much again for coming on. This has been a blast as usual. And please, before we go, remind the folks again where they can find Ghoulish University.
Yeah, so you can find Ghoulish University on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. We also have an Instagram, Ghoulish University, and we do have a Twitter at Ghoulish Uni. You can easily reach me at either of those accounts. We do not post often, but I do still see everything. So if you needed to. Also, you can email us at ghoulisuniversity@gmail.com.
And once you guys kind of retool and relaunch, I will be sure to share that so everyone will know when you're back up and at it.
Yes, it's coming on soon. I can feel it.
So thanks for joining us, folks. As always, you can find me on Facebook and Instagram at Light and Shadow Pod. You can become a supporter on Patreon at patreon.com/Light and Shadow Pod. Next month is going to be a very special episode. My mom and I are going to Maine at the end of September. We're doing like the whole Stephen King thing. So October's episode is going to be a recap of our time in Stephen King country, and I cannot wait. So if you want to prepare for that episode, you can maybe do a reread or a rewatch of Pet Sematary and or It. So revisit the world of Stephen King, and until next time, stay spooky.